So this is the video for the Kaleidoscope Place Mat, and this is designed as an English paper piece project or an EPP project, but you can absolutely machine stitch this as well, and I'll show you some tips for that a little bit later on. So what is English paper piecing? English paper piecing is where you have the paper template and you wrap the fabric around the paper template to create your shape that you're going to stitch together. So that's our part one of it. Part two of it is that it's a kaleidoscope piece, and you can see here I've got 6 pieces and they're all identical. They're all exactly the same element of a design. What you're going to do for kaleidoscope quilting is you're going to turn all of those. So we're going to turn all of those so this blue corner with a stripe on is facing in over. So there you go. And then it starts to create that kind of spiraled kaleidoscope effect, and that's exactly what you're going to go for. You're going to put together 7 of these, so you can pick your favorite designs from, I think there's actually 8 or 9 kind of hexagons available. You pick your favorite ones and you use those 6. So you're going to create one for the center and then put one on each of the sides and then fill in the gaps between with just 2 pieces to create your full placemat. But first of all, we're going to show you how to put those hexagons together. So you can see I've got some pieces here which I've already attached. Now these ones are all sewn on, so I'll flip those over, you'll see, and this one is glued on because there are 2 kind of different ways to do this. I'm going to show you both and you can choose whichever is easiest for you. So we'll start with sewing it on. So to start off with this, we're going to need to put a quick knot in the bottom of our thread. Let's just slide that off. There you go. It doesn't need to be pretty, it's purely functional because this stitching is going to come out once we're finished. So we're going to lay that in place on there and then just press and fold each of these sides over. Oh, noisy. I don't think there was any need for that, but never mind. Once we've got it in place, we are going to stitch through both the fabric, there's that green bit again, the fabric and the paper. So you're using the thread to sew through all of those layers and hold everything in place. And you want to make sure that when you sew these, that you do a running stitch. You go back in the same side you came out of. So I've come out of this top side, I'm going to go back into there, and you'll see I'm putting pretty big chunky stitches in here, and that's really just because I don't need to stitch it any more than this. I just need to hold it in place, but I am going through those key places like the center of that corner there to hold all that in place. You don't want to pull it too tight because you don't want to curl anything up. You just simply want to hold it in place. Now don't worry about these corners because you can see these corners are all kind of sticking out at the minute. We'll deal with them as we sew it together, and sometimes you can actually benefit from a little bit extra on one of those corners just to help you kind of secure things in place. So let me just pop that back through. So that one is done. We'll just snip that off. So that's our 6th one like that. The other option you've got is you can glue them on. So you can get glue sticks, especially for fabric pens. Now these usually are blue, but they will dry clear when you're done. Now I would advise gluing the paper, not the fabric, because it's just, I find it a lot easier. So I'm gonna do all 3 sides, pop that back in. You can see that's starting to dry already. And we're just gonna fold that over to hold it in place. There you go. And you might want to put a little bit extra on those corners if you think they're sticking up a little bit more than you'd like. But that's your other option for holding your paper onto your fabric. So once they're all ready, we're going to put them so they're all the same way around. So I'm going for this light blue bit in the middle, and then we're going to start stitching them together. So to stitch them together, we're going to take 2 pieces. I'm going to place them face to face like that, and then with my thread I'm going to start I generally try not to start kind of too far onto the corners, but because it's the first one, we're going to have to. There we go, right on the corner. And then we're going to just tie that in a knot. Now, the reason I'm tying this in a knot rather than just stitching and stitching and stitching into it is because it gives me a really good kind of anchor for my first one, and then from then I can run on and do others. So now we're going to stitch all the way along, and I'm just taking the tiniest bit from both sides. Just hold that out of the way so you can see. Just the tiniest bit, and whip stitching through. So a whip stitch is where you're just coming over the top, whipping the thread over the top and pulling it tight. And you want to keep these nice and small, and you want to keep them nice and tight as well, because even though I'm using an orange thread here on what is a blue and pink design, once I put a couple more stitches in here and flip it over to the front, you'll actually not see that orange thread at all. So what I also recommend is every kind of 5th or 6th stitch, just put in what I would call an anchor stitch. So you're going to go pull it nice and tight, and then go through one more time in the same place, just to hold everything in place. And if I open that up, you can see, even though that is a bright orange thread, you can't see that at all. So you're going to go ahead and continue to do that, stitching them on and stitching them into those hexagons. Once you've got them into the larger hexagons, then you want your surrounding ones added. Once you've got your surrounding ones added, you're going to add the little pieces in to finish off the front of the design. So I did mention I was going to show you how to do this if you were going to machine sew it as well. So what you're going to do is lay out everything. You're going to lay out all of your hexagons. You're going to have one in the center, and then you'll have 6 surrounding ones, and then in the gaps between those surrounding hexagons you'll have a couple of other pieces to bring it back to a full hexagonal shape. And what you need to do is, once you've laid everything out, then just separate it out into rows, and then stitch all the pieces in each row together at a time, then come back and stitch all of those rows together. So a different way of working, but still absolutely doable if you want to sew this by machine.